Let's go now to former D.C. homicide detective and Fox News contributor Ted Williams. Ted, thank you for being here. A lot to digest here. The thing that stands out is that we've got an active manhunt in a residential area that is under lockdown for a man who is heavily armed, seemingly sophisticated in his attack, wearing a police uniform. Where do you go from here, Ted? What are the things that your top line concerns?
Well, my first concern is this just limited to that area and those politicians in that area, or is this something that is that could very well be nationwide? That is my concern. Is there a group or one individual out here that's targeting lawmakers? We know that, according to the authorities, that they have this manifesto that had the name of numerous lawmakers on it. I would have to agree with your previous guests that the law enforcement officers know that this is involving more than just one individual, that there are perhaps other individuals that are actually involved in this. And this took a certain kind of a sophistication and planning. And you can tell that by the fact that the person impersonated a police officer, had a law enforcement uniform on. And I would assume then believe that that is why the Hartmans and the Horstmans opened their door because they saw a person in uniform. And that also, Brian, creates a problem for law enforcement officers. Because remember, law enforcement officers that are on this manhunt, they're also dressed in police uniforms.
Yeah, the thing I'm thinking about, you bring up an excellent point, is that you want to find this person as quickly as possible, but there are a couple of things that are slowing them down. One, you're in a residential area with innocent folks all over the place. And two, the person you're looking for is wearing a police uniform. That has to slow down any kind of manhunt, does it not?
Absolutely. It puts law enforcement at a different height of alert in looking for this killer or killers. And so what they're going to do is methodically go through that community. I heard one of your guests say that the person could very well be holding someone hostage. So I would ask that individuals in that community, if you know someone, try to stay in communication with them, because we don't know where this killer is. He could still be in the area, or he could very well have escaped the area. But again, the question is this incident, these sad incidents, are they limited to that specific area, or is this something more sinister that's going on not only in Minnesota, but perhaps around this country?
The fact that this suspect was wearing a police uniform, had a police vehicle, by all intents and purposes, not just any police uniform, it looked like the real thing. And that vehicle, not only, besides that being a horrific detail in this attack, could that not also be the thing that leads them to the suspect? Because not everybody has access to a police vehicle, and there's got to be something that they can do to retrace the steps, given the fact that he had that vehicle with the lights on outside of the home of these politicians.
Absolutely. That vehicle now is in the hands of the federal agents, and I am sure that they are going through that vehicle with a fine-tooth comb. And that vehicle will give them a great deal of information. It would not surprise me if they have a specific focused suspect as the result of that vehicle and the contents of that vehicle. So the investigation, while that whole area is in fact a crime scene, they are focusing specifically on that vehicle right now, because that vehicle holds the clue to the killer in this case, in these individuals, unfortunately.
And obviously it held one of the biggest clues, which was the manifesto that police said they found in that police vehicle with a list of politicians' names, which led them to conclude that this was a politically motivated assassination of one former House Speaker and her husband. and as well as the attempted assassination of State Senator John Hoffman and his wife, Yvette, who, by the way, at last check, they were shot multiple times, are out of surgery, and we'll give you an update as we get it. Let's bring in former FBI Special Agent Nicole Parker to join the discussion along with Ted. Nicole, the FBI is on the ground investigating. We know this. At this point, when the FBI is now involved in what is a residential situation with a man dressed as a law enforcement officer. The very first thing I thought about was the Boston Marathon bombing when they looked door to door in a residential area for Tsarnaev. How does the FBI approach this right now at 11:32 Eastern?
All right, Brian. So here we are again, another awful tragedy. People using violence to deal with their personal grievances. Obviously, this does appear to be very much politically motivated. The manifesto is going to be extremely important. The FBI's involvement is going to work hand in hand with the local and state partners. Obviously, the locals are the ones that are initially responding. I actually have worked threats to, senators here in Florida. I've worked these types of investigations in the past, and they will determine who has the best jurisdiction, what the charges would potentially be. But right now, the number one priority is the safety of the community, like you mentioned. This individual did interact with legitimate law enforcement, went out the back, and now we have the manhunt going. Number one priority, keep the community safe. FBI is going to be on the ground helping with, conducting the crime scene evidence response teams, dealing with that. But again, the primary importance right now is making sure that there is not an ongoing threat and this person is on the run, armed and dangerous, like you've continuously reported. If you have interaction with any law enforcement, make sure that there are two individuals, and you can always call dispatch to verify, is this a legitimate police officer or law enforcement officer? Safety for the community, number one, but this person is armed and dangerous. He is desperate. I think a very important piece of evidence that the FBI or any law enforcement agency would be looking at, was there a ring doorbell camera right there at the front door when they approached the door of the senator's home and this woman's home as well? They're going to be looking for that. Obviously, the vehicle is filled with evidence. That is a treasure trove of evidence for the FBI and for the local law enforcement. They're going to be going through that right now, and they will start to build a profile of anything that they can find on this individual. How did they get that police uniform? What vehicle were they in? What tag, the tag? Who does it go back to? This is a very complex situation, but again, there is an ongoing threat because this person is still on the run.
We now have a statement from President Trump. Let me just read that right now. The statement goes as follows. I have been briefed on the terrible shooting that took place in Minnesota, which appears to be a targeted attack against state lawmakers. Our Attorney General Pam Bondi and the FBI are investigating the situation, and they will be prosecuting anyone involved to the fullest extent of the law. Such horrific violence will not be tolerated in the United States of America. God bless the great people of Minnesota, a truly great place. President Trump is no stranger to political violence. We are now dealing with two state lawmakers, one who was just assassinated, another one fighting for their life. I'll start off with you, Ted. What needs to be done here, you think? I know that there's an ongoing manhunt, but what needs to be done here to make sure that we are doing a better job at this point at protecting the lives of our public figures?
I really wish there was one way to actually answer that question, Brian, but I can tell you, there's really nothing that can be done if someone is hell-bent on getting at a political person. We saw that with President Trump in Pennsylvania there. I was in Butler, Pennsylvania, covering that incident down there, that attempted assassination. We saw another attempted assassination of Trump in Florida. And then we've had these lawmakers. You are always a target if you are a public official. And there's nothing you can do but just be very sensitive of your surroundings. But I have to believe that what we need to do, unfortunately, in this country is to lower the temperature. I've always said the war between the North and the South has never ended. We have politicians at each other's throats, and the public are at the throats of politicians. And we just need to try to do what Rodney King said many years ago. We need to all try to get along.
Nicole, your thoughts on, obviously we just heard from President Trump. It's his birthday. It's the 250th birthday for the U.S. Army. There will be a military parade in Washington, D.C. on the same day that we have what is set to be the largest day of demonstrations nationwide for President Trump's second term. Taking all of that in context, your thoughts on what the FBI needs to be doing here to perhaps do more to protect the lives of our politicians?
Just like Ted said, I wish that we could just tell everyone just take down the hate, take down the violence, take down, the hate and disgust. What we saw President Trump go through is absolutely unacceptable. It is evil. It is disgusting. It is wrong. And what we are seeing this morning, no one should be losing their life as public servants or former public servants who are trying to serve their communities. And again, the grievances that people have, turning to violence to solve their problems, that's not going to solve the problem. And like Ted said, unfortunately, there's not just something that we can do to make everyone simmer down. But I think looking at these riots and what's going on nationwide, this is not okay. What's been happening in LA is unacceptable. The hate for law enforcement, what law enforcement is having to endure is just disgusting. It is despicable that this is even tolerated in our country. And thank goodness that we have President Trump in charge, who is saying we are not going to tolerate this. We are going to respect our law enforcement. President Trump is coming out today and quickly making a statement saying this violence against these individuals who were murdered, that is unacceptable in America. We don't care what side of the political spectrum you stand on. It's not about politics. These are about human lives. And we need to start having, like you said, like Ted mentioned, human decency. We may not agree on our political views and we may not agree on certain things, but that is not okay. That is not a reason to act out in hate and in violence. But unfortunately, that is the situation that we're in this nation. Working as an FBI agent, Brian, I saw it day in and day out. Fighting evil is what we did every single day. Kash Patel is the FBI director. Pam Bondi is the attorney general. I can tell you they are working around the clock, and it is a true battle that they are fighting. But again, law enforcement is right in there doing their jobs. I have such admiration and respect. And what is so abhorrent about this crime? This person was impersonating a local law enforcement official. Okay, that is what the community is expected to trust. There are many people that we can trust these days, and that's who we hope that we can trust. When they come to your door in the middle of the night, you want to hope that they're there to protect you, warn you of violence. When they are the ones actually causing the violence and impersonating an officer, this person must be found and must be held to the highest and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I can guarantee you that they will hit this individual with every possible charge, local, state, and federal.
Ted, Nicole, thank you. We now know as you mentioned, that search for this suspect, that is the highest priority right now.
Hey, it's Will Kane. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Kane podcast for full episodes right now.